Scott Sloan Show. This is News Radio 700 WLW. So we have the San Bernardino shooting, part 2.0. I mean, how much can that town go through in the last 18 months, right? You have a teacher, Karen Smith, concerned about her new husband, Cedric Anderson. A little concerned about his behavior. They're married for 2 months, and she said, this guy's acting weird. He's concerned that she's having an affair when she wasn't. And just back being really, really strange after 2 months. And she moves out of her house with the kids because she's like 53 years old, second marriage. And anyway, Anderson, the new husband, started contacting her repeatedly, trying to get her to come home, starts hounding her, pestering her. And the more he does, the more crazy she realizes he is, and simply continues to avoid him. Of course, this culminates when he enters this elementary school with a .357 Magnum revolver and fires 10 shots and even stopped once to reload, as a matter of fact. Rounds, of course, struck his wife, 2 children, killed one, the 8-year-old, before Anderson turned the weapon on himself in a murder-suicide. And it's kind of scary because the security footage shows him walking around the perimeter of the school. He's trying to open on doors that are locked already. Then he walks to the front of the office to check in. The employee says, oh, yeah, you're Karen's husband. Yep. Okay, go ahead. Signs in. And you know where the classroom is. Yeah, go ahead. No indication whatsoever that he was acting weird, that he wasn't brandishing the firearm, that he was acting totally normal up until the point he walked in that classroom and started firing. And now the reaction is we need more gun laws. We got to do something to stop this from happening. And here we go again. That we live in an imperfect world. We were talking about immigration last hour with this Fairfield woman. It's an imperfect world. Immigration is imperfect. You're going to get people who come here illegally. How do you handle that? To say, well, you just deport them. Well, it took 15 years. Conversely, with the Karen Smith tragedy out in San Bernardino, it's along the same line. Well, we just need more gun laws. What gun laws would have stopped this from happening in the first place? Edwin Walker is with U.S. Law Shield. He's a Second Amendment attorney and joins me now to talk about it on 700 WLW. Edwin, good morning. How are you? Whoop, wait a minute. That's me. Edwin, you there?
Yes, sir.
There we go. Okay, all right. We're connected now. It's all good. It's already a safe school zone. It's a safe school zone, meaning drugs, alcohol, and guns in particular are not allowed in the school zone. That is a law. If the laws indeed worked, why would we need new laws?
Well, actually, this is, obviously it is unfortunate tragedy. Nobody deserves to be murdered in any capacity. I know that the anti-gun folks are, of course, portraying this as a school shooting, which it is, unfortunately, a shooting that occurred at a school. It is not a school shooting.
Right.
This lady, if she worked at Best Buy, he would have gone to the Best Buy. If she worked in an office building, he would have gone to the office building. It just so happened she worked at a school. And the thing about it is that if you look at the particulars with this situation, you did a fantastic job of outlining every single specific fact about this.
Oh, thanks.
Where California has already passed laws. California has the most extensive gun laws in the United States. They've lowered the threshold for getting protective orders, mental health orders. Virtually anybody can go to an authority and say, that guy's got a gun, I'm scared of him, and the court will issue an order taking his gun away from him. And so if you look at it, if you look at every point in that timeline that you pointed out, there is a law that already exists on the books that this man broke. Was he supposed to have a firearm in the first place? Well, apparently he does have some sort of criminal record.
Yep.
He may not have been eligible to have a firearm, but he did. You're not supposed to take a gun to a school in California, but he did. You're not supposed to have a gun if you're accused or you've shown a propensity to commit acts of family violence, but there's a law against it. But he had it. The only thing that was not hyper-regulated in this entire scenario is the fact that he used a .357 revolver. A .357 revolver, still a quote-unquote unregulated firearm or an unbanned firearm in the state of California. If he would have used a Glock 19, that's an assault weapon under California law. So the only thing that wasn't hyper-regulated was the use of the .357.
Because it's a revolver, kind of old-school technology, which, who knows, I'm sure that in 4 months, Edwin, that there'll be some proposal that we got to ban, I don't know, revolvers for that reason, too.
That's what...
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to point out, and that is what is that is what is unique about this situation, because if you get a pro-gun or an anti-gun person and you talk to them and say, okay, just like you proposed, what other law could you do? You will bore down into their core, which at their core, all of these anti-gun folks, their ultimate solution is the removal of all firearms from society, both the criminals and the law-abiding. And in today's society, unfortunately, in our vision of American liberty, you don't punish the law-abiding because you want to prophylactically prevent some lawbreaker from doing something bad.
You know, it's funny about this, and I just kind of put this together. Last hour, there's a local woman who's been a legal immigrant. She's getting kicked out, 4 kids here, but she's been here for 15 years. And my point was, it's like the death penalty, that the death penalty really isn't the death penalty. You understand this as an attorney, is it delays the sentence. We had a famous case in Ohio where a guy literally ate himself off of death row, and they couldn't execute him. And I asked where the justice is. Similarly here, the same people who claim, well, we just got to get rid of 11 million illegals. Well, you can't wave a magic wand. It's like the same people will chastise those on the left who think that we can round up all 300 million weapons in this country and just simply get rid of it. You're going to have a black market. You're going to have weapons. You're going to have 3D printers that make them. And the idea that we need more laws is absolutely absurd. It's a market issue is what it is. Edwin Walker is a Second Amendment attorney from U.S. Law Shield talking about the San Bernardino shooting. Oddly enough, last month, Edwin, I'm sure you're familiar with this, that lawmakers in Sacramento there's 5 gun control bills coming out of the first San Bernardino shooting. One of them is measures that would outlaw assault rifles with detachable magazines, ban possessions of magazines holding more than 10 rounds, and require homemade guns to be registered with the state. How would any of that have prevented this latest shooting? None of it, right?
Oh, no, none of it. And that's the thing about it. And we saw this especially with regard to the political fallout after the tragic Sandy Hook shooting, is that every single law that was proposed or talked about would not have prevented the Sandy Hook shooting. But the thing about it is that with the anti-gun folks, there's a lot of hand-wringing and gnashing of teeth. And, well, we just have to do something. You know, it's a tragedy. We have to do something. It's reactionary. And unfortunately, whenever laws are implemented on a reactionary basis, somebody's going to lose their liberty. And, you know, in America, we're here about promoting liberty, not eliminating liberty. And one thing that was amazing was how immediately all of the anti-gun folks that are on Twitter, the predominant ones, you know, the leaders of Moms Demand Action in every town for gun safety and all those others, they immediately came out and blamed the NRA as if somehow the NRA, you know, put the gun in the guy's hand and said, hey, or more importantly, put the thought in the guy's mind that it was okay to take another human being's life. I mean, the NRA, as far as I know, has never, ever, ever advocated anything like that.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of the NRA. I'm not a fan of essentially the extremeness of their politics and the like. I don't need a gun club to keep my Second Amendment rights. So, but I have friends that are NRA members. I don't hate them. Let's put it that way. But yeah, I get what you're saying in that. You know, if we just had another law on top of the law on top of the law, clearly this guy had no regard whatsoever for the law. Otherwise, he wouldn't have done what he's done. To simply say we need a law, I think it dismisses just human nature in that for some reason the Cedric Anderson guy, who appeared normal to even the people who let him in, and, you know, I think locking the doors around a school and having people go through the main entrance is prudent. It's a good idea, right? People check in at the front desk. But here's a guy known to the staff because he's married to this Karen Smith. No indication whatsoever he was carrying. No indication whatsoever he was going to go in and shoot the place up. And yet he did. How come, and maybe this is outside your pay grade, Edwin, but why is it that we want to try and create a law or prevent things like this from, again, we should dissuade things, but let's face it, we live in a real society, in a real world, in that there's a lot of imperfections. Humans are, by definition, imperfect people. Things like this are going to happen. Why do we think that we can legislate away all of the insanity in the world?
Well, because, you know, obviously human death and injuries have been, you know, that's obviously part of life. It's the most unfortunate part of life, but it is part of life. But, you know, a single death is a tragedy. And whenever you have everybody knowing everything that happens in the world, basically as it happens, you have reactions that say, isn't this terrible? And, of course, the only way that we have to involuntarily regulate human behavior is through the passage of laws. You can always try to persuade somebody, talk them out of it, say, hey, it's not a good idea to kill people. But ultimately, the only organ that has the power to punish or prevent it is the state. And so that's everybody's immediate knee-jerk reaction is somebody got hurt, therefore there needs to be a law. And unfortunately, it does not take into account the fact that, humans have existed on this earth for millennia, and tragedies will happen. Tragedies will continue to happen. We have already passed laws that outlaw the intentional injuring of persons. So, other than that, I don't know what else to do, because things like you can't steal, you can't rob, you can't rape, you can't murder, right, those have been on the books for centuries. And so now everybody who wants to try to regulate human activity looks at how can we prevent this? Well, you pass all these preventative measures, and until we get to a situation like the movie Minority Report, you're just gonna prevent more law-abiding citizens from doing otherwise lawful things than you are preventing tragedies from happening, because the human element still exists, and there is that imperfect nature.
Yeah, and I love the nature too of the argument itself. It's maddening in that, well, what you two are saying, Scott Sloan, and your guest, is that you simply, so it's okay for people to kill other people and just go in and shoot schools up? That's it. No one is saying that in this conversation. What I'm saying is we live in the real world where there are bad people out there who get through the cracks, and bad things sometimes happen to good people. It doesn't mean we wish that to happen. We just are acknowledging the fact that things are imperfect, that sometimes in life things happen for no good reason whatsoever. It doesn't mean you can't look at it and go, okay, are there things we can do to prevent this in the future? Like, for example, I don't know, there's a recall in the airbags in cars. Of course, we recall the cars and fix the airbags. But in the case of gun control, we keep going at the same angle. So, well, why don't we turn around and say, how about this? Why don't we just create a law, Edwin, that bans crazy people? Wouldn't that solve the problem?
That would be great. I got so many crazy people in my life.
Just starting in our family. Good God, everyone be in prison.
Yes. And so what we advocate is we try to shift the focus, and we say, look, we've got enough laws that try to prevent bad people from doing things. How about we look at the laws that prevent good people from lawfully protecting themselves against the bad people? How about that? How about everybody, takes a little individual responsibility? The state doesn't put binders on them about what they can and can't do in terms of protecting themselves. Like when this guy went into the school, he clearly was intent on murder. So he's like, whatever law I got to break to commit my murder, I don't care. No law stopping me.
Right.
And this woman, being that she was a law-abiding citizen, totally, completely, 100% helpless when that man walked into the room with the gun.
And now I'm not saying that she herself may have carried a gun, and let's say for the sake of argument that she has one that's locked up in her vehicle because it's a safe school zone. And I don't even know, actually, with the laws in California, you probably can't even have it locked in your car or have it on campus property. Although a Supreme Court just, I don't know, it seems like every day we have a new ruling on something, so forgive me for being a little vague on this thing. But I think you know what I'm saying, is that if she had worked in, let's say, as you said, Best Buy, or she had worked in somewhere in an office, would she have the means to protect herself because she had grave fear for her life? Probably not, if you look at this case, because they're only married 2 months. But I see your point. You're going, well, what about this woman's ability to protect herself from a predatory ex-husband?
Yeah, and we have to look at ourselves in that same prism. Folks in California, the only private citizens who are allowed to carry handguns are people who have been specifically approved by the sheriff of their county to get a license to carry a handgun. That means that if you're unknown to the sheriff, you're on the perhaps the sheriff doesn't like you, but you're otherwise a law-abiding citizen. Sheriff says, sorry, guy comes up and wants to rob you at the car wash. You got to take him as he comes. We're not going to give you the means to protect yourself. And that's what we're all about, is seeing that everybody who chooses to, we're not saying that, everybody has to carry a gun if you are uncomfortable.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
But everybody who chooses to accept that responsibility, that I know that if I come face to face with a bad guy, there aren't going to be police to help me. The police are only there to investigate crimes after they occur. I am solely responsible for that, and I'm willing to accept that. But government, please don't put restrictions on my ability to do that.
Yeah, I'm with you. If there's one thing we should be mad at, is this guy thinking, I need to kill my ex, and I don't care if I strike innocent children. It's so maddening. I see why people are angry and outraged. There's no doubt about it. I'm angry and outraged, but I don't think the solution is more gun laws, and I fear that that's probably what's going to happen. Again, joining me on News Radio 700 WLW from U.S. Law Shield. U.S. Law Shield. I'm going to make you our official Second Amendment attorney. How's that, Edwin? Is that fair?
Well,
next time I have a Second Amendment issue, I'm going to have you on.
That'd be great. I'd love to come on your show anytime.
I appreciate it. Thanks again for the time, Edwin.
Yes, sir. No problem.
There you go.